So in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you a little tip, a little trick, a little method that I used to remember things that I kept on forgetting when I was first learning French. I still use it from time to time now, but I used it a lot more when I first started. Just to say, this doesn't have to be only for French learners, it can be for any language you're learning or anything that you're learning, although all the examples in this video will be for French learning because that's mainly what my channel deals with, but it could be for anything. So just to give you a quick overview of what this is, it's remembering things by sort of creating an association or a connection or a story or an image around the thing that you're trying to remember. I am going to give you a lot of demonstration and examples on my trusty whiteboard so you will be able to see better exactly what I mean. I will start off with genuine, real life sort of memory solutions. I like to call them memory solutions, connections, images that I did really use when I first started learning French that really did help me. And then I will go a bit further and just show you some examples of how you could do this with things that you're trying to learn that you keep on forgetting. And then a while ago, a couple of months ago, I did ask in one of my comment sections what were some things that you guys were having problems remembering, and I will suggest some ways that you, my viewers, could remember the things that you were struggling with. So let's get going. It is worth saying that this won't work for everything that you're trying to remember, and it might not work for you. Maybe you don't learn this way, but it's certainly something worth trying. If you're struggling to remember a particular thing, why not give this a go? You don't really have anything to lose, I would say. So let's start off. I'm going to start off with my favorite one, which I really, I want to be clear, like I really did use these, and it really did also help. So one thing that I always had problems with was remembering the difference between je veux, which means I want. I will try to make this as understandable as possible for the people who don't speak French. This means I want, and then je peux means I can. Now, as you can see, these words are only different by one letter, and I looked at this and I thought, how can I remember that veut goes with want and peut goes with can? Because I was continuously, really couldn't remember. So I looked at the first letters and I thought, how can I make an association between the letters V, W, P, and C? And so I drew them out and I thought, V and W, actually, a W is kind of like two V's together. So that's basically how I remembered it. When I was shown je veux, I would think, okay, if I write the first letter twice, does it give me a W for want? So I would look at veut, I'd write the V twice, and I'd think, oh, I've got a W for want, it must mean want. And then if I had a P, I would think or imagine the P twice, and I would think, no, I don't have a W for want, so it must mean can. And then I actually developed it a bit further, that I would kind of make the shapes with my hands like two V's is a W, and that is genuinely how I remembered. I'm now at a point where I can remember without doing things with my hands, but that is really how I remembered that. I had so much trouble doing that. Another thing I used to struggle with was remembering that gauche means left, and droite means right. And maybe for you would just click into place, but for me, I couldn't ever remember this. And this time I thought, oh, I can't really do anything with G and L and D and R, and there's not much I can do. Like, can I turn the letters into arrows? No, not really. That doesn't really work. So then again, I took the letters G and D, and I thought, G and D, D and G, Dolce & Gabbana. Now maybe if you don't know the brand Dolce & Gabbana, and I don't own anything by Dolce & Gabbana, but I always remember the brand D&G. I think someone I used to know had a belt with D&G on it or something like that, and that's the type of thing you should go for. Weird things that you remember that are personal to you. Like, I would always think D&G goes in that order, or it's alphabetical. But when I look at my hands for left and right, it's actually G and D and not D and G. And now at this point you might be thinking, oh, this is so complicated, this isn't, you know, you're not going to remember that. Well, all I remembered is it's just D and G backwards. And then I never forgot it. I would just be like D, G and D with my hands, and I would just remember that it stands for gauche and droite. Yeah, sometimes I remember. And I do this quite a lot now, actually. I can't always remember whether gauche or droite or whatever. And here is an actual genuine, this is vintage. This is the type of thing you can do to enforce your learning a bit more. So I traced around my own hands, and then I wrote like gauche and gabbana and dolce and droite. And then what I did was I found an image, the logo of Dolce & Gabbana, which was in my mind. I found on Google Images, and then I drew it out, but I drew it the other way around, G and D. And so doing these kind of things just help me remember now. Whenever I'm thinking gauche and droite, I just think, oh, it's backwards D and G. And maybe it wouldn't work for you, but that worked for me. So that's the type of thing you can do. Are there any brands, or do you always think of things in a certain order? In terms of thinking of things in a certain order, here's another one. This isn't exactly French, but it is related. I could never remember the colours of the French flag. Because, you know, to me, as an English person, I don't know whether this is the same for all English people, but when I think of the colours, I always think red, white and blue. I don't know whether it's something that we say in England, red, white and blue, red, white and blue, but for me, I always think red, white and blue in that order. But that isn't the order of the French flag. The French flag is not red, white and blue. It's actually the other way around. So the way that I remember it is I just think, oh, it's red, white and blue backwards. It's the same thing. So, I mean, it's really helpful when things are alphabetical, and then you could just remember, but I don't think that is alphabetical, no, because W for white. But yeah, so then you can make things like, oh, well, how will I remember that it's backwards? Well, you know, in England, we drive on a particular side of the road, and they drive on a different side of the road. In France, you can say, oh, their driving is backwards, or something like that. Or it's the opposite way round. They drive on the opposite side, so their flag, red, white, and blue, is the opposite. Like making all these like connections through images, but through words and through ideas and concepts, to me really helps. Another one that I was having trouble with, I'll show you the drawing of it. I hope you can, I know you can't really see, I will write it, it's got like notes on the back, so maybe you can't see. But basically the problem that I had was that I kept on writing the word petit, which means small or little or whatever. Whenever I used to write it, I used to forget quite often that when you're writing it in feminine, it should have an E on the end, and I would often forget that it should have an E on the end. So I wrote, as you could hopefully see on the sheet, I wrote petit in big letters, and then I did a little E, and then I had kind of written around it like, oh, what a cute E, little E, tiny E, sweet little E on the end, and I created all this idea about this small, or little, because that's what the word meant, this little tiny E, so that when I used to see petit, or used to write petit, I would think, oh, should it have a cute E on the end? And sometimes, no, it shouldn't have a cute E on the end. But making that association with the tiny E, the small E, the little E on the end, made me think sometimes, not all the time, this was a less successful one, honestly. But that type of thing of when you see that word, then it popping into your brain, oh, little E, just sometimes helped me remember that in the feminine form, it should have an E on the end. Right, so now I should probably just take a break and clean this blue off this board. Okay, I'm back. So now I'm going to sort of show some more examples that might help you think of ways that you could remember some things that you keep mixing up. And if, for example, you're a beginner to French and you're learning the words être and avoir, this one means to be and this one means to have. And if you were getting them confused, you know, you couldn't remember exactly, you could do something like be for to be, and here you have have, which you could then think as the have in have, or you could create a kind of mental image or say out loud to create the connection. If imagine like someone with a very strong French accent, like do you have un cigarette or something like that. You know, the French people kind of say have for have, I don't know. So that could be a way to remember, like être and avoir would be, you know, can you put a letter in front of it? Is there a word hidden in it? Is there something you can connect to something funny or something visual? If you could imagine like a French waiter in a cafe in Paris saying have, or do you have all your food, or something like that, and then you would start to connect have and be and être. It's just suggestions. I always think it's best if you make up your own ones, then they will make sense to you. Maybe my ones don't make sense to you. Let's do another one. So one thing that people can mix up in French is quite easy, is the words cheveux, which means hair, and chevaux, which means horses. It means horses. It's plural. Now there is only one letter difference between these, hair and horses, but they're quite different. So then I would look at it and think, you know, there's an E, but it begins with a H. Or there's an A, but actually there's an A in hair, so you don't want to get that. Can I turn the E into hair, or can I turn the A into a horse? I guess you could turn the A into a horse, but you could also probably turn the E into a horse. So great horse pictures. So that wasn't really working for me, and I've just drawn on my box. But one thing that I did see, and this helps you connect it to like other bits of your French knowledge, is this word here, veux, means, as you've seen already, means want, or je veux means I want in French. Veut is also a French word, but you know, for the sake of this, just ignore it, okay? So je veux. Now if I want to make it personal to me, I want hair. I want lovely hair, I want beautiful hair, but I'm not actually that interested in horses. I don't really like how they look. I don't have horse pictures. I've never really done any horse riding. I'm not really interested in horses, and I don't want a horse. So if I was thinking, okay, I'm going to start writing the word hair, I would get here and I think, oh, I want hair, but I don't want a horse. And that would be my phrase. I want hair, but I don't want a horse. And then I would remember, okay, veux for want. So I would think like, je veux hair, but I don't want horses, okay? So that would be one way to remember. So you can actually link other bits of your French knowledge into the things that you're trying to remember. I'm now going to move on to some of the things that people actually commented they were having problems with. So one of them was someone couldn't remember that the passé composé, which is a tense in French, composé, they couldn't remember that this is the one where it's like je suis allé, which means I went, or let's do a different one, or tu as mangé, you ate. So composé means composed, so that might help you immediately remember, oh, it's composed of these two parts. You have either the être or the avoir, and then the verb. So if you think you need to compose it of these two elements, you're composing things together, that might just immediately help you remember, oh, it's the one with the two bits in it, oh, it's the one where I put the suis, etc. Maybe that helps you, but if it doesn't, you could get even more visual. And if you imagine you're composing music, you might think of a music note, for instance, like that, and you could draw a picture of a music note, and then you could think, oh, it has these two blobs on it, so you have 1, 2. In the same way you have two elements, in the same way you have two different verbs, être or avoir, and so just the fact that there was two could help you remember, okay, I'm composing two bits with either one of the two être or avoir. If you wanted to be even more visual with it, you could draw this on a piece of paper, and you could write inside the music notes être and avoir. and then you could remember, okay, so I'm composing with two elements and I'm using être and avoir for the passé composé that I'm composing. Something like this, like you make a big story about it to remember what it is. I need to clean the board again. So now we're on to the last example. Again, I'm going to be solving a problem that someone wrote in the comments. This one was actually left by Ophelia, and Ophelia has her own YouTube channel where she learns lots of languages. I will link that in the description. You should go check out Ophelia. She's so lovely. But she was saying that she had a problem remembering that remember was se souvenir. Now again, I looked at this, I thought, can I make a picture out of it? Do any of the letters match up? Is there a word hidden in it? And in some cases there isn't. And there was quite a lot of comments of people saying things they couldn't remember, that actually this method just couldn't work for, because it was just too complex or it was too difficult. But for this, for example, one thing is connect them by putting them in a sentence together. A sentence that you could repeat to yourself. So for instance, when I go on holiday, I must remember to buy a souvenir. Why must I remember to buy a souvenir? Because I want to remember my holiday. And so you can connect them in this sentence, I must remember to buy a souvenir, in the hope that it creates some sort of remembering between the words, some sort of connection and association between the words. You need to remember to buy a souvenir, so you have the souvenir to remember your holiday. And I feel like this would be even more strengthened if, when you actually did go on holiday, you must think to yourself, I need to remember to buy a souvenir to remember my holiday. And when you're in the shop and you buy the souvenir, you think, I now have the souvenir to remember my holiday. And hopefully, you would start to remember that's a souvenir. I know that doesn't really help because you might not remember this bit, but I don't know. You get the idea that you could try to put them in sentences together to create a link between them. You could then, for instance, you know, chant these sentences, create a song out of the sentences. If the sentence was something funny, like involved a monkey or something, then you could draw images of what the sentence was describing in the hope that it creates sort of mental links between these like different words. Anyway, that is everything I wanted to say. So I know this was all a bit crazy and you're a bit like, oh, okay, what was she on about? But hopefully this might work for some of you, something that you keep getting mixed up. Try to create a connection, you know, even just, you know, making a weird sentence, a weird song, or maybe writing it on your forehead, something weird, and then you always go, oh yeah, that was that weird word that I decided to write on my forehead because she told me to do it in the video. You know, okay, I think that's probably enough. That's my trick. Okay, if you like this video, do leave me a like. Do leave in the comment section below any of these that you've decided to make for yourself. Did you go away and create a little image that you want to share with everyone? Or if there's anything that you're struggling to create, maybe you're not as imaginative as you would like to be and you just can't think of a way to remember something, post it in the comments and maybe I will do a follow-up video where I do some more of these. We'll see. Okay, don't forget to subscribe. I do make videos about learning languages, about learning French, videos in French and all sorts. So, see you next time. Bye-bye.